So I wanted to share with you my theory of mental illness, and I'm laughing because it's a theory. It's completely a theory. It's not really backed by any research, but it's sort of this hunch that I have after just reading a lot about mental illness and thinking a lot. And I feel that even though I don't have the research to back it up, that it's true. And if you look at mental illness statistics here in America, I mean, they are staggering. They're crazy. It's like everybody is mentally ill. I don't know what percentage of the population takes an antidepressant, but it's probably around 10%. And then you've got maybe close to half the population who's depressed. You've got another small sect of the population who has schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD, whatever. I think I read something in, I want to say it was like Kentucky, where I want to say it was like 20% of the kids, I'm not making this up, it was like 20% of the kids had ADHD. And then I think I remember reading a statistic. So these are all loose statistics, right? I read these years ago, so the exact percentages may be off, just a forewarning. But I think it was around like 20%, close to 20% of kids in Kentucky had ADHD. And then I think I read something on the CDC's website where when an X amount of kids are diagnosed with ADHD, about 50% of them will be on medication. So I'm like, my God, that means 10% of Kentucky's population, of their adolescent population, is on some sort of stimulant. And stimulants are just horrible for the body. They mess with hormones. I don't think they're good for kids to take, generally speaking. But it's just crazy. I don't want to get off topic. But it's staggering the amount of mental illness that we have here in America. And I've been thinking about it. And, when you look at our lifestyles, the way we live today is not the way we were evolved to live. And what really kind of triggered my theory of mental illness was I was listening to this podcast years ago, and it talked about how there was this rat that they took and they got him addicted to cocaine. They laced his water with cocaine, and this rat would come back just like a drug addict to that cocaine and just drink from the water. You could tell the rat was addicted. Well, they took that same rat, and he was just in some sort of cage from what I understand, presumably just some sort of cage, didn't really have much to do. It was just like your cage plus cocaine, right? Hands up out there if you were that rat, if you would do that cocaine. It's like, well, you got nothing else to do, right? I would have done the cocaine. So anyhow, they take this cocaine addicted rat, and they put him in this rat haven. I haven't read the study. I only heard about it on the podcast, and they didn't really go into details from what I remember, but this rat is put in this rat heaven. It's this, and I just imagine whatever a rat heaven would be like. It's probably got stuff for him to climb. It's got places for him to hide. Whatever would make a rat feel safe and at the same time healthily stimulated. I would imagine his cage had all of that stuff. I don't really know that much about rats. Well, guess what happened? His addiction went away. He no longer wanted or craved the cocaine water. And that's exactly how I view our world today. If you look at how humans have evolved. So humans go back, probably 200,000 years. And we have these predecessors that are maybe 2 million years. And there's all these different like sects of kind of Homo sapiens and hominids and all this other crap, right? None of it really makes sense to me because I don't read about it enough for it to make sense. But there's different branches of humans, and then eventually there's this Homo sapien, and here we are coming forward. Well, we've lived a specific lifestyle for thousands upon thousands of years. Then we had this agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago. Now we have like what you might call like a technological computer-based revolution. We're talking about like the metaverse, people losing their minds in video games, people committing suicide after playing video games nonstop for 48 hours in Korea, all this crazy stuff. So you take humanity that's lived for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years as nomads in these small tribes of maybe 50 to like 200 people in this close-knit community, and then all of a sudden you take this same species, this same Homo sapien, and you put them in today's environment. Well, it's no wonder our DSM-5 is like this thick, and there's all sorts of weird diagnoses out there because humans are sick. We're living in a sick environment, this environment that's not tailored to how we ought to live as human beings. We went from walking every day to being in tight-knit communities to only knowing this 200 people a day to now it's like we've got these mega cities with lights and constant stimulation. I mean, we are the most overstimulated species on the planet, and a lot of it is just self-stimulation. It's stimulation we're choosing. We feel addicted to it. We feel addicted to YouTube, to watching TV, to binging on Netflix, to all sorts of crap, to video games, to comfort food. I mean, we're eating like we would never used to eat. We eat 3 meals a day. People used to never eat 3 meals a day. All this stuff we're doing, we're sitting down the majority of the day. Like I'm sitting here now. We do so much stuff differently now than we did thousands upon years ago. It's no wonder that we're all sick. How else could it be? It couldn't be any different. And I remember thinking like, God, this DSM-5 book, this thing is crazy. Look how big it is. Anybody and their mom could have a diagnosis. And that's because probably everybody and their mom could have a diagnosis. We live in a world that is sick. We live in a sick world. And so I guess that is my theory of mental illness. The reason that so many of us are maladapted to this environment is this is not the environment for us. It's so difficult to adapt. So we have to adapt. We have to adapt. And the ways that we adapt, those come out as kind of these mental illnesses that we see. I mean, I think of schizophrenia, for instance. What would be the adaptation of schizophrenia? Well, maybe it's you're in this environment that you can't handle anymore. You can't stand the trauma that you've had. You can't stand where you're at. You can't stand the parental neglect. You can't stand the bullying and abuse that you've experienced. And so you just completely dissociate. You lose your mind. You come up with this other reality. You start experiencing this other reality that's all in your head. And maybe with schizophrenia, maybe that mechanism, that kind of dreaming mechanism that we have, that when we fall asleep we start dreaming, maybe there's a waking mechanism that somehow taps into that same kind of reality, and that's how they dissociate. They can't stand this world anymore. They don't want to be here. They want to be somewhere else that's more pleasant and pleasing to them, or someplace that takes them away. Of course, I guess one of the downsides to this approach to schizophrenia is, well, then how do you explain people who are schizophrenic but they've got these horrible hallucinations, these terrifying hallucinations? And to that, I don't know. That's very curious. I'm not sure. And then I heard, I think his name is pronounced Gabor Mate. He's this physician slash psychologist slash trauma therapist. He was talking on a Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about ADHD. And he said that kids with ADHD, they just dissociate. They completely dissociate. What do you do in an environment that you don't enjoy being? Like if you're at school, for instance, you don't want to be there. It's too stressful. There's too many kids. There's too many personalities to handle with. Your teacher says you got to sit still. You got to do X, Y, and Z. But you got to be there. You can't escape. So what else can you do? You just dissociate. And that's what he talks about. My point in bringing all of this up is I feel like the way that we've adapted, the way that we express these kind of mental illnesses, they're sort of these coping mechanisms for dealing with this environment that humans were not made to be in. And anyhow, I'm going to cut the video off now. That's kind of my weird theory of mental illness. Leave me a comment below. What do you think after watching this video? What are your thoughts about how the way humans have lived compared to how we're living now? And what are some things we could change to kind of tap into the way that we used to live without losing where we are now and with preserving some of the things that we enjoy today? Let me know.